Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Whitney Alexandra from Tempe, United States. Whitney is a performance coach for top women entrepreneurs who want to create wild wealth, freedom, and success beyond what most people dare to dream. Whitney, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Oh man, I've got a long story, but I think it really started when I was about 18 or 19 years old. I walked into an office building. I had a brown suit on and a string of pearls, and I called myself a professional, right? No experience, but it was in that moment that I learned that you could show up and have the job that you wanted, and I really just sort of ran with it from there. I started coaching entrepreneurs, working with them to develop their businesses. And that was more than 20 years ago. So I've worked with, hundreds of executive leaders and hundreds of entrepreneurs now. And yeah, it's been such a wonderful privilege to have such a great career working with so many wonderful people.
Yeah, I just read that you became member of the prestigious Forbes Business Council this year. Would you tell us more about this business council?
Yeah, so it's very exciting, and thank you for celebrating that. I'm like every other entrepreneur. We forget to celebrate ourselves and these achievements. So thank you for the reminder. So the Forbes Business Council is actually really cool. It's a combination. They've got a number of different groups. So whether you're a business coach or you're a professional in another way, you can join this group of thought leaders, and you're contributing to articles. You're helping to shape really the future voices of those people that are reading Forbes and contributing to Forbes.
You are now specializing in female entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Was that always so, or you started specializing, or it was there a cutoff point somewhere in the past and said, okay, I'm the best in this field and I'm going to focus on just on one gender?
Yeah, I love that question because there was no clear cutoff. Right. I've had a really successful and great relationships with many male executives, lots of CEOs, $1 million, billion-dollar CEOs. But it really was for me the shift during the pandemic where I saw a lot of women their careers taking a back seat, their businesses taking a back seat to their partners, supporting the families, and all doing really wonderful things. But I started to think to myself, like, there's going to be such an enormous gap here between what these women are able to do over these couple of years. And then they've got the consistency of typically a male partnership. And so I really just wanted to be someone that was contributing to their success and helping them grow their business faster, because a lot of them really get stuck in a different mindset loop than a typical male executive would. And so I thought, I've got the same female brain. Let me help crack the code for them as well.
Great story.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you something. More than 50% of our listeners are female. And I do believe that it was really important for us to get you that specialize in female entrepreneurs on our podcast. So thank you again for that. I would like to ask you, when we go into the differences between men and female entrepreneurs, is it true that female entrepreneurs have different priorities and treat things differently? Could you explain a bit about these differences and why it's so important to empower female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, what a wonderful question. Years ago, I worked with this woman, and she had a brilliant way of describing this. She said, most women entrepreneurs will go to, get some type of advanced certification in their profession. They'll get, a degree, a master's, something, an extra certificate, and they'll work for someone, and they're doing all of these free sessions, and they're really building their business till they feel like they're at a point when they can actually charge for their services. And even then, they're probably charging a very small amount for what the value of the product or service that they actually provide is. And so the example she gave was, here's what a typical woman entrepreneur would do, right? We do all of these things. And what does a male entrepreneur do? Typically, they say, I've got a hammer, I've got a truck, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm in business, right? And so it's a lot more focused, and it's a lot faster that a lot of men typically would start and scale their business. And the confidence levels come at a different rate as well. And so it's very interesting. So a lot of the work that I do is working with women entrepreneurs. How do we get you in action right now? How do we make sure that there is no big delay, that we're not starting your services off in a cheap way or a free way? Everyone is out there building their business, but typically they're coming from a place where they've already got a substantial amount of experience. Maybe they're a corporate executive or someone who has, a long and valuable career, a great skill set. Why should their services be free or cheap? And so I think it's taking a lot of that mindset of, getting into action quickly. This is why I also call myself a performance coach, because I think let's get into motion quickly. What can we do to make things happen faster and easier and with more joy in your life?
Is there the main reason for lower pricing and underpricing services, despite all the professional experience, is the main reason in lower self-esteem or lower confidence, as you call it? Or is the main reason that female entrepreneurs are not so wealth building driven, and they want to change things and get more freedom for themselves and their families, instead of just building wealth? So is that self-confidence problem, or a priority problem or challenge?
You know what? That is an excellent question. And I think the short answer is both. It is typically you're seeing someone who, I talk a lot in my business about worth and your self-worth and what you believe your services are worth. And, I think sometimes that gets mistaken when people say, charge what you're worth. Well, I'm priceless, you're priceless. Our services typically are priceless for people. They should have a big impact. And so I think that's where things get a little muddy for people sometimes. But the second option you gave me, which was, not as wealth driven, I find women entrepreneurs, they are fiery. They are ready to change the legacy for their family. I find that sometimes it does get a little messy when you're thinking about really wanting to make an impact, and then the income on the other side, because, sometimes they think, or people will say, if you're a spiritual entrepreneur, that should be a gift. That shouldn't be free. And so I think things get a little messy sometimes when you're trying to say, okay, well, I want to make the biggest impact. How do I impact the most amount of people, knowing that the most amount of people can't pay for your services? So I think there's a tendency to believe that if I lower my prices, then I can help, more people, which is not true. Typically what we'll see is someone who they invest in the level of their transformation. So, if I'm willing to invest, how many entrepreneurs have bought, I don't know, a $10 course, a $20 course, something like that. And the impact that, the course could have had could be helping them make millions, or helping them make, a considerable difference in their business, but they're not valuing it in that same way, right? I think there are so many entrepreneurs that have a big bookshelf or a digital bookshelf full of courses we've never opened before. And so the value is not really understood or captured in the same way. So I think it is both.
What is, according to you, the main advantage of female entrepreneurs compared to male entrepreneurs? You started hinting that male entrepreneurs just buy their truck and start going on and do it, and they don't care whether they're qualified or not, and that the female entrepreneurs, they get qualified first, and then they go and offer their services. That is one of the differences. What is your assessment is the main difference between sexes in entrepreneurship?
I think, like if we just go back for a minute, I feel like we could have the same level of education, and it's the difference in when I feel ready to begin, right? And I think that's part of it, is having that mindset of like, okay, I've done the certification or I've done the thing and now I'm ready. And the readiness typically for women happens a little slower, and it happens after they've got substantial amount of proof points. It's not, the self-belief isn't exactly the same, but I think the biggest differences that I see between women and male entrepreneurs is that we use different language. So I've never had an executive CEO tell me he wasn't confident in front of a group of people. Instead, I've heard him say, I didn't feel prepared. The words didn't sound like me. They'll use different words, but at the heart of things, we're talking about confidence. I didn't feel like I could show up and really do my thing. But one of the other differences that I see is that we have women who are a lot more focused on impact, a lot more focused on community, leveraging their businesses to do more good, sort of that ripple effect that you might see in, a community of some sort. So if I think about, a typical, woman entrepreneur, they're typically hiring a number of women to support their business. They're supporting usually a number of women entrepreneurs as clients. They're probably, giving a little bit more. I think the research shows, at least here in North America, that women entrepreneurs tend to give a lot more to their community, both financially and of their time. So I think there are a number of benefits, not to mention, like, many of my clients and many women entrepreneurs also are mothers. And so having the flexibility in most cases that they're able to still do the things that bring them joy in the family. So whether it's, knowing that they're not at work late at night, they're able to pick their child up from hockey, or they're able, I'm in Canada, so picking them up from hockey, or making a meal, baking with them on the weekends. Whereas, not that doesn't always happen in a male driven entrepreneurship.
What is, with everything that now you mentioned, all these advantages, what is the number one advantage of female entrepreneur compared to male entrepreneur?
That's a great question. What is the main difference? I think the main difference, I think one of the most interesting things about women entrepreneurs is that, we look to others for signs of success. And when we see another woman, we already know that there are much fewer women in businesses or scaling to the same size as other, male ventures. And so I think every woman that's successful shows another woman that they don't need to have a small business. They can have a business of the size that they choose. They can have, whatever it is that they desire. So I think having more women in seats of power, doing awesome things in their business really is, helping show other women it's possible for them too.
I have, that's more like a provocation now. So
okay,
let's say that there would be equal amount of male and female entrepreneurs. How would that affect, how would that macroeconomically affect our economy? Would that lower interest rate, would that lower inflation? What would happen if there would be an equal amount of entrepreneurs of both sexes?
That's probably a better question for you. I have no idea on the on the economics of it. I have zero idea on the economics of it. My clients, we do something that they call magic math with Whitney. And so it's not true math, but it's more of the, what is that ripple effect in their business when they're able to scale, when they're able to get their business to the next level.
Okay, so provocation didn't work out.
No, that's not in my zone of genius.
When you're improving performance, because you're a performance coach,
yeah,
would you be more on the side of grind, or balance your life? What is your side in this everlasting battle?
Yeah. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of people, when they hear performance coaching, they think this person's going to make me work harder and and like really be on me about getting results. And the second part is true. I care deeply about my clients getting great results. But I don't personally believe you have to hustle and grind in order to be successful. And so a lot of the coaching that I do with people is really getting to the heart of what it is that they desire. And let's make more room for that. Let's have a very focused plan on that. I think it's impossible for people to have more than one or two objectives or things that they're focusing on, right? The back and forth and the context switching, the energy lost in switching back and forth with your focus, you just lose all productivity. And so, a lot of work that I do with them is getting really clear on what would have the most impact in their business. How do we achieve that really quickly? How do we clear the right amount of time so that they're able to, really enjoy things, so that it's not a 60-hour work week as an entrepreneur, but that you can say, like, I work 20 hours, I work Monday through Thursday, whatever your thing is. And I'm here to sort of give them other ideas, be a thought partner and be an accountability partner through the process. But I really do believe, because I've seen it all, right? You can have exactly the business that you want, exactly the life that you want. But it just takes like having some of those boundaries and really being honest with yourself about what is going to fill you up. So short answer, it's about joy and desire. And I know that doesn't sound like typical phrases we talk about in the business world, but it is true.
Very nice. You mentioned a bit about focus. So if I look at the things in completely logical sense, focus is the complete opposite of multitasking.
Yeah.
And females, you're famous for multitasking. Does that mean that you have to move away from multitasking and focus also on day-to-day operation, or is focus important just on strategic level?
Yeah, I think focus can be achieved in a few different ways, right? So if someone, and I also don't believe that anyone is good at multitasking. I think that is fake news. We've told ourselves that we're good, or we have a couple of proof points to show that we're good. But I believe, focus can happen in a number of different ways. You could say, Monday or Tuesday is my day when I just work on this strategic project. That's all. And there might be a few different things that need to happen that feel like multitasking through that day in order to achieve your project. But even just a few little tricks like that will help you feel more focused, like you can put your full energy into something. It could also be like an hour of focused time, turning off notifications and some of those things that we know are a distraction. They just chew away and eat away at our calendars, and the time we have set aside for things that are important. So I think there's probably a way to do both, but I think multitasking is like overrated, not possible. And we should try and limit the amount of times when we require multitasking, because when I hear someone tell me that they need to multitask in order to get it all done, that tells me we've got a problem with focus, and like focusing on the right things, focusing on like what's really going to move your business forward, what's really, a project or something that is lighting you up that you want to work on. Because we know if it's a project that you were really excited about, you're going to carve out time, right? If you say, I'm so excited to go on this vacation, or I'm so excited to start writing my book, or I'm so excited to go to this awesome networking event, you're going to find the time to do it. And so this is really just an exercise in being honest and on like, how much can you do? And where do you need support?
In my practice, I found out that as a risk manager, I get to talk mostly with female because they're much more risk aware, not averse, but aware. And because they're risk aware, they are much better in finding options, how to assume risk, how to avoid risks, and how to transfer risks. So they do not assume high risks. Their profits are a bit smaller for that, but they're really constant. Would you agree that female entrepreneurs are much more constant than male entrepreneurs just because they do not assume really high risks?
I think a lot of what you said is true. The consistency, I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are women who have a very consistent business, and consistency is great, right? Like we love consistency. But you don't have those peaks and valleys. You don't have those additional like big wins or windfalls of other things that come in, which I think happen when you're willing to be a little bit more risky with some of your choices, some of your options. So if I think about it, you could have a woman entrepreneur that's, let's say, making somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a month, right? Like a very healthy business, making a good amount of profit, and maybe her calendar is maxed out. For her to get to the next level, she probably has to invest in a team member, right? And there's risk with that. There's risk. It's a bigger financial investment. It's things like that. And so I think there are many ways that we see them maybe taking a step slower than a male counterpart, because they are going through, like you mentioned, all of those that risk analysis and understanding, wanting to be really sure about it. Yeah.
So how could we mix best female and best male attributes in a winning combination? What is your take on that?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm always putting a bit of a gender lens on decisions, on challenges, on situations, right? Like first I start with, this is how I think, this is how I would approach it, this is what I want to do. And what would, you can even use a fictional character. Like I love Billions. I love the show Billions, if you're familiar. So, even looking at some of those characters and saying like, how would they handle this situation, right? Almost like a bit of an alter ego, where you're able to still leverage some of those strengths and some of those qualities that we admire in male entrepreneurs too. I think there's a lot of great qualities that men bring to the table, women bring to the table. So like you said, sort of learning how to leverage those, even with most women entrepreneurs, the softer skills are things that, typically most male entrepreneurs don't have the same level, but they can also be a bit of a hindrance to the business too. So it's, how do you find the balance? How do you find the balance in everything, in every relationship? But it's definitely healthy to challenge, is this something that I feel because I'm a woman in business, or is this something that, my male counterparts would do the same thing? So I think that's a super easy exercise anyone could take away.
Okay, I was implying at male-female teams, how you would put a male-female team together. Is there any tip how let's say, entrepreneurial couple, regardless if they're not a couple in their private life, how would you assemble a winning team? What skills and what advantages of one sex and from other sex you would you would expose, or what you think are the most important from advantages from one sex and from another sex?
Oh, interesting. Gee, you're really putting me on the spot with some of these questions.
You're the best. You're the only one I can ask, because there's
Yeah.
no better one than you for
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. So
Okay. Well, I am such a big believer that people need to work in their zone of genius. So it could be that you are a woman that has an incredible zone of genius in finance or in operations, which are not typically the places that we would see women leaning into their zone of genius. You could also be a man that has an incredible sense of marketing, communication, and some of these other softer skills that traditionally we see women, advance and accelerate their careers in. So I don't know that it always comes down to women are better at this and men are better at that. I think it's really about finding a partnership regardless of gender, where you have balance, where there is some clear where you can be in your zone of genius and you've got enough balance with that other person that they are also in their zone of genius. There's a couple of women that I work with, and they are brilliant partners. And one loves to be in front of the camera and in front of the clients and doing all of the marketing, and the other one loves to be behind the scenes. And so I think you're going to find these differences, whether it's different genders, same genders, but all partnerships. I think people just need to be really honest about where they shine and do more of that.
great answer. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Can you share any trade secrets or quick tips for our listeners?
Yeah, I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts, and you were talking about not just this positive thinking and having belief, but so often we go back to past stories, past experiences, and we make them mean something that they don't need to mean anymore. And so I think a lot of women entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs, if you're willing to do the work, it's going back to, where did this thought or belief come from, and how do I remove it? And that's a lot of the work that I do. It's not just positive thinking into the results that you want. It's really about getting to the root and the cause and the reason for why we show up the way that we do. And then learning to kind of rewrite how we work with that. Right. So instead of your subconscious sort of calling all the shots, keeping you small, keeping your business a certain size because maybe you had a mistake with money, or maybe you don't think you're good at business or can't be a leader. It's really working with those two. So I always encourage everyone to interrogate the thoughts that you have in your mind. It's not just about glazing over and thinking positive. It's about really getting to the heart of why do I feel this way?
Okay. And before we close, where can our audience reach you?
The best way to find me is on my website. It's whitneyalexandra.co. And I'm always hanging out on Instagram, so you can find me there as well, Whitney Alexandra.
Okay, I will put the links to both in the description below. Thank you, Whitney, for being my guest tonight.
Thank you for having me.